This is the core activation mobility warm-up. So starting on your back with your knees bent, start to just gently roll through your pelvis and low back. Inhale as you arch your low back away from the ground, and exhale as you round it in. Do this a few times and then begin your dead bugs with hands above your shoulders and knees above your hips, locking low back into the ground. Bring alternate arm and leg down to touch the ground. If this is difficult, you can use the first modification would be to just have your legs moving and not fully straightening your knees. Second, you would go with opposite arm and leg, but not straighten the leg out. So you choose the variation that works for you and do about 6 to 10 per side. Next, moving into lying march. So lying flat on your back with your head flat, pulling one knee into your chest at a time. When the other leg extends out, keep it active and strong and pull the toes towards you. Alternate this side to side with a good flowing pace for about 8 to 10 repetitions each. Next, moving to your alternate side to side knee drops. With hands locked in behind your head and your elbows staying locked into the ground, begin dropping your knees from side to side. Your feet start positioned wider than hip width to make sure you access a little deeper into your outer hip TFL, tensor fascia latae muscle in the outer hip. Move with good pace and make sure you try to drop that inner knee, both knees towards the ground, and particularly that inner knee to get that internal hip rotation. Next, moving into your bridge. You can do a 2-foot bridge here, so feet are directly underneath the knees at the top, or you can go into a single leg bridge. You can do this activated version of the bridge where you alternately drive one elbow into the ground, and that's the opposite elbow to the hip that you're lifting with. So you want to create a connection between, in this case, the glute and the opposite opposite shoulder area on the opposite side of your back. Next, you're moving in to your bow and arrow. So lying on your side with knees stacked, bent in front of you, stacking your hands, and then opening up as if you're pulling open a bow and arrow with tension in your arm and slowly unraveling your hand. You can come straight back, or you can make a clock motion overhead, following with your gaze as you move your hand back to the start. It's more advanced, and if you are doing this, you're trying to keep your hand flat on the ground or touching the ground the whole time. This wouldn't be where you would start. Generally, you would start with just the basic motion where you open up and return back to your starting point and not taking your hand overhead. So you're completing roughly 8 to 10 per side. Perhaps you've received a asymmetrical prescription for these. If you have one side that's tighter than the other and you can tell, then you'll do more on that tighter side, twice as many, or perhaps holding at the end on that tighter side for 15, 30 seconds. Over time, you'll be able to start to create more symmetry in your body if you practice asymmetrically on your tighter side more. Next, you're moving to your reach and rotate. So with one knee in front of you and your top knee bent and heel pulled in towards your bum to find a stretch through your quad. With your elbow on the ground under shoulder, push away from the ground, stay steady and strong. Inhale as you reach up and circle your arm around. Exhale as you rotate down and reach towards the elbow, finding that stretch across the back line from your hip to opposite shoulder. You're completing these with good rhythm and flow, working with your breath, completing between 8 to 10 per side. And once again, there's likely an asymmetry in your body, or if there is and you can feel it, then do more on that tighter side. You can do an extra 5 or 10 on that side that's tighter. Make sure you're staying strong through that bottom shoulder. Push away from the ground and make sure you still have a stretch through that top front thigh. That's really important to take that heel in towards the buttocks. If you find that knee slides forward past the hip, then you can lock it in with your other foot. Now moving into cat-cow. So as you exhale, you're rounding through your spine, tucking your chin, and as you inhale, you're arching your back and looking up. Move through this with a decent amount of flow and pace, but trying to feel each segment of the spine moving individually and then also as part of the whole. Complete between 5 to 10 movements, cat-cow movements, and then switch to your next exercise, which is the groin opening, rocking back and forth, adductor stretch. So try to keep your low back flat here as you extend your leg out to the side, your foot in line with your knee. Rock back and forth, stretching through the long line of the inner thigh. That tendency is for that hip to want to hike up. Keep pulling that right hip, or that hip of the extended leg, back down. And then coming into a stretch, beginning to move into the foot turnouts. So you're, once again, trying to keep less movement through your spine and most of the movement through your hip, through the femur, the leg bone in the hip socket. Do your best. Turn that foot up with good activation 10 times and then switch sides. Rocking back and forth on the other side, roughly 10 times. Now, groins can be a bit of a tender area. Don't push it too far at first. Be a little bit gentle if this is your first time doing this. Over time, you can start to become more robust with it, more bouncing, more elastic with your motion and movement, and deeper into the movement. But take your time. Treat your groin with care at first. Move into your foot turnouts. You'll notice that my low back moves a little bit with it. Try not to let that happen. The pelvis isn't moving. It's just that leg bone in the hip socket that's turning and rotating as best as you can, isolating through there. Next, moving into 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock child's pose. You're going to bounce about 5 times, walking your hands out to 2 o'clock first. Rock back, find a stretch through the side body and the outside of the shoulder, the lat area. Hold for 10 seconds at the end. Find a deep stretch and hold. Then return back to center. Walk across to your other side to 10 o'clock. Once again, rock back and forth. Find that stretch into the outer shoulder blade, outside of your torso. Hold at the end after 5 or 6 rocks. Find a deep stretch. Breathe into it. Open up through that outer shoulder, that lat area, latissimus dorsi. If you have one side that's tighter than the other, this is where, again, you'll do it asymmetrically. And now moving into your final 3-way hip flexor stretch. First, coming into low lunge position, bending to the side, then rotating with arms overhead, and then folding forward to stretch through the back of your hamstring as you straighten the leg. So there's that rotation, forward bend, inhale, arms overhead, rotate, side bend, and fold forward with straight leg. You might need to modify this slightly or go a little bit slower, especially as you're getting used to it. You'll notice I do 2 different variations of the rotation. You can do it with arms overhead, or you can grab the outer knee, keep the knee in place as you use the knee to pull your body into the rotation. So you're completing 4 to 5 of these 3-way hip flexor stretches per side. That's side bend, rotate, fold forward, side bend, rotate, fold forward. And this concludes your core activation mobility warm-up. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions, leave comments below or contact me directly.